Miyamoto Musashi's rule: why the strongest warriors stay silent. Have you ever been in a situation where you wanted to speak, to defend yourself, to prove a point, but something told you to stay silent? Maybe it was an argument. Maybe it was a moment of tension. Maybe it was with someone you respect, or someone who disrespected you. And in that silence you realize something. Sometimes, saying nothing is the most powerful thing you can do. Because in that moment, you weren't weak, you were in control. You were resisting the urge to react, choosing instead to observe, to calculate, to remain unpredictable. The power of silence is something few truly understand. Most people think strength comes from dominating a conversation, winning an argument, making their voice the loudest in the room. But have you ever noticed that the most powerful people in any situation, the ones who command respect, are often the ones who speak the least? Miyamoto Musashi, Japan's greatest swordsman, understood this better than anyone. He won battles not just with skill, but with restraint. In fact, he once defeated an opponent before the fight even began, simply by staying silent. His rule was simple. The strongest warriors do not speak, they act. In this video, I will break down how Miyamoto Musashi mastered the power of silence, not just in battle, but in life. You'll discover why true strength lies in silence and how it can give you control over any situation. Musashi's 3 layers of silent power: control, influence, and mastery. How silence can shift the dynamics of an argument, making others reveal their weaknesses. How to use silence strategically in your personal and professional life to command respect. But most importantly, this all builds up to the final part of the video, where we explore the most difficult situations of all: conflicts with the people closest to you. Because while it's one thing to stay silent in business, debates, or even with strangers, true strength is tested when the ones who know you best try to hurt you the most. Stay with me until the end, because mastering this last lesson will prepare you for life's toughest battles. The paradox: why true strength lies in silence. You've felt it before. That moment when words could make things worse, when staying quiet kept you in control. But we live in a world that tells us the opposite. It tells us that power is about being loud, being heard, proving a point. Yet true power has never belonged to those who speak the most. It has always belonged to those who know when to remain silent. Think of the most feared leaders, the most strategic minds, the most respected individuals. They don't waste their words. They don't react emotionally. They sit back, listen, assess. And when they do speak, every word carries weight. That is real power. Why? Because silence forces the world to reveal itself to you. When you are silent, you observe more. You notice things others don't. The hesitation in someone's voice, the slight shift in their expression, the words they don't say. Silence allows you to see past illusions, to recognize manipulation, to sense fear, insecurity, or deceit that would be hidden beneath a flood of words. Silence is the art of absorbing information while revealing nothing. Musashi knew better. He spoke little, observed much, and acted only when necessary. He understood that in both battle and life, the one who stays silent holds the advantage. He knew that silence doesn't mean weakness, it means power, because the more you say, the more you give away, and the more you give away, the easier you are to manipulate. Consider how quickly people surrender control when they speak impulsively. The person who talks too much exposes their strategy, their emotions, their fears. They reveal their plans before they are even set into motion. They try to convince others of their strength, not realizing that true strength requires no explanation. In martial arts, in business, in life, the one who knows more but speaks less is always in control. Silence is the tool of the wise. It creates an aura of mystery, making people wonder what you are thinking. It forces others to reveal more while you remain unreadable. The person who speaks the least often holds the most influence, as their words, when spoken, carry gravity. This is why history's greatest leaders, warriors, and strategists mastered the art of measured speech. The more you listen and the less you say, the more powerful you become. Because in the end, Silence is not the absence of power. It is its purest form. Musashi's 3 layers of silent power. 1. Silence is control. When you speak too much, you reveal too much. Your weaknesses, your emotions, your intentions, all laid bare for others to use against you. Musashi knew that words once spoken can't be taken back, so he chose them wisely, or not at all. Think about your own life. How many times have you said something you later regretted? How often have your words been misunderstood, twisted, or used against you? How many times have you shared your goals, only to feel the motivation drain from them once others knew? Silence is not just a defensive tool, it is an offensive one. It is the key to remaining in control. A person who speaks too much reveals their plan. They expose their insecurities. They let their emotions dictate their actions. But a person who speaks only when necessary, they are unreadable, unpredictable, and therefore untouchable. Silence allows you to maintain control over conversations, interactions, and relationships. It forces others to tip their hand first. The moment you speak, you provide people with information they can use against you. By staying quiet, you force them to speculate, and speculation often leads to self-doubt. This self-doubt creates an advantage for you, positioning you as the one with the upper hand. 2. Silence is power. In a heated argument, what holds more weight? Shouting back, or simply staying silent and letting the other person reveal their weakness? Musashi mastered this. He understood that silence makes people uncomfortable. It forces them to fill the void. And in that space, you gain control. Think of a negotiation. If one party keeps talking, justifying, pleading, they lose. The one who speaks less forces the other side to reveal more, to second-guess themselves, to overextend their position. Silence creates uncertainty, and uncertainty creates power. When you don't react, you become unpredictable, and the unpredictable opponent is the most dangerous one. This is why Musashi did not react to his opponent's words. He let them talk, let them grow confident in their assumptions, and then struck at the precise moment when they least expected it. Silence, in this way, is not passive. It is an active strategy. 3. Silence is mastery. Musashi's greatest battles weren't won with words. They were won with observation, patience, and precise action. He lived by a philosophy of not wasting movement, not wasting energy, and most importantly, not wasting words. He wrote in the Book of 5 Rings, "Do nothing which is of no use." That includes speaking when speaking is unnecessary. This doesn't mean you should never speak. It means that when you do, it should be deliberate. Every word should have intention. Every statement should be calculated. There is no power in mindless chatter. Musashi mastered his sword by understanding when not to strike, and he mastered life by understanding when not to speak. When you speak only when necessary, your words gain power. People start to listen more intently because they know that when you choose to say something, it is meaningful. This is why great leaders and wise individuals are known for their brevity. Their silence speaks louder than most people's words. Expanding the reflective power of silence in arguments. Silence in an argument is more than just the absence of words. It is an active force that shapes the conversation, controls the energy, and forces introspection in the other person. When you refuse to engage in reactive back and forth, you force the opposing party to confront their own words. It's as if they are arguing with themselves. This can be unsettling, leading them to rethink their position or reveal deeper emotions they were trying to hide. In an argument, silence has an almost gravitational pull. The longer you remain quiet, the heavier your presence feels. The other person begins to feel the need to justify themselves further, to prove their point with greater intensity. But in doing so, they often become more emotional, less logical, and ultimately more vulnerable to contradiction. The most skilled communicators and negotiators understand this deeply. In high-stakes conversations, those who remain silent and simply listen end up gaining the most. Why? Because silence not only forces others to reveal their thoughts, but it also gives you time to analyze them, pick up on inconsistencies, and plan the most effective response, if a response is even needed at all. Silence as an emotional mirror. Silence reflects energy. It takes the emotional weight of a conversation and bounces it back to the other person. If they are angry, the absence of a reaction can make them more aware of their own aggression. If they are being unreasonable, silence forces them to sit with their own irrationality. Have you ever noticed how in heated moments, the quietest person in the room often ends up having the most authority? It's because silence commands respect. It shows self-control, patience, and wisdom, traits that people instinctively admire. Let's say someone insults you, expecting a reaction. The typical response would be to snap back, defend yourself, or try to prove them wrong. But what if instead you simply held your ground, looked them in the eye, and said nothing? That moment of silence would weigh heavier than any words you could say. It would force them to sit with the discomfort of their own aggression. They might second-guess themselves. They might realize they are projecting their own insecurities onto you. In some cases, they might even begin to feel foolish. This is why silence is such a powerful weapon. It doesn't just diffuse tension, it redirects it. The role of silence in psychological warfare, in strategic negotiations, in power struggles, and even in social dynamics, silence is one of the greatest tools you can use to unsettle an opponent. Imagine two world leaders meeting for a tense diplomatic negotiation. One leader begins speaking, trying to dominate the conversation. The other simply listens, nods occasionally, and remains unreadable. By the end of the meeting, the talkative leader may feel as though they've won, until they realize they've revealed far more than they intended, while the silent leader has given nothing away. This applies in personal life as well. The less you react emotionally, the more you command respect. People will begin to realize that they cannot manipulate you, that their words do not shake you. You become an immovable force, someone whose presence alone shifts the dynamic of a conversation. The reality is, most people fear silence. They fear what it reveals about themselves. They fear what it forces them to confront. But those who embrace silence gain an unmatched advantage in every aspect of life. Mastering the art of intentional silence. The key to wielding silence effectively is intentionality. Silence should never be passive. It should be a conscious choice. There is a difference between being silent out of fear and being silent out of strength. The former makes you weak. The latter makes you powerful. Silence works best when paired with active listening. Truly hearing what the other person is saying, without immediately crafting your response, allows you to understand them on a deeper level. It allows you to identify their motivations, their emotions, and their blind spots. And when you do speak, your words will carry the weight of someone who has fully processed the situation, rather than someone who is reacting on impulse. This is what Musashi mastered, not just in combat, but in life. He understood that words are like sword strikes. The fewer, the sharper. He didn't waste movement, and he didn't waste speech. And because of that, every action and every word carried power. The next time you find yourself in an argument, try something different. Instead of engaging emotionally, pause. Hold the silence. Let the other person fill the space. Observe how their own words evolve. And when you do respond, if you even need to, do so with the precision of a master swordsman, striking only when necessary. Mastering silence is about more than just avoiding unnecessary words. It is about controlling the flow of energy in every interaction, commanding respect, and ensuring that when you do speak, your words leave a lasting impact. When you engage in an argument, your natural instinct is to defend yourself, to react, to prove your point. But silence has a way of reflecting the energy of the argument back onto the other person. Silence forces the other person to hear their own words. It creates a mirror, making them question themselves. Have you ever noticed how uncomfortable people get when they are met with silence? The longer they go on, the more they expose their emotions, their flaws, their lack of clarity. Imagine two people arguing. One is loud, aggressive, trying to overpower the conversation. The other remains silent, listening, observing. The loud one gets frustrated, They start repeating themselves. They start grasping for stronger words. They try harder and harder to dominate. And in doing so, they lose control. This is the power of silence in action. By maintaining silence, you turn the energy of an argument against itself. The louder the other person becomes, the weaker their position often gets. Silence acts as a mirror, reflecting their anger, frustration, and insecurities back onto them. This can cause them to either rethink their stance or become overly aggressive, revealing their weaknesses in the process. It's one thing to practice silence in a debate, a negotiation, or even a casual disagreement. But what happens when the words come from someone close to you, someone who knows exactly how to hurt you? The deeper the bond, the sharper the blade of words can be. In moments of personal conflict, when emotions are at their highest, people often say things they don't mean, or worse, things they know will wound you the most. When a loved one lashes out, it's easy to fall into the trap of reacting emotionally, defending yourself, or trying to fight back. But what if you didn't? What if instead of returning fire you stood your ground in silence? Silence in personal conflict is not about ignoring pain or pretending words don't hurt. It's about refusing to let someone else's storm pull you into its chaos. 1. When someone you love attacks you with words. There is a unique kind of pain when someone who knows you deeply uses their knowledge against you. They may bring up your past mistakes, your insecurities, your biggest fears, because they know exactly where your wounds are. And your instinct will be to fight back, to prove them wrong, to defend yourself. But Musashi's principle of silence teaches us something counterintuitive. The most powerful response is often no response at all. When you refuse to engage, you take away the weapon they are trying to use against you. Your silence does not mean their words don't affect you. It means their words do not control you. People expect immediate reactions in heated arguments, especially when they throw hurtful words at you. When you don't react, they are left alone with their own words, forced to hear them echo back in the silence. 2. The moment they start arguing with themselves. Silence in personal arguments creates an emotional void. Most people fill that void by continuing to talk, by escalating, by trying to provoke you. But eventually, they start arguing with themselves. Have you ever seen someone lash out at you expecting a fight, only to get frustrated when you don't engage? They repeat their accusations, they double down, and in doing so, they expose something, their pain, because at the core of personal attacks is hurt. And when someone is lashing out, they are revealing more about themselves than they are about you. When you stay silent, they become aware of their own anger. They hear the weight of their own words. They realize they are speaking out of emotion, not truth. Your silence becomes a mirror, and in that mirror, they might begin to see themselves more clearly. 3. The power of pausing before you speak. Silence doesn't mean you never respond, it means you respond on your terms. A pause before you speak gives you something rare in personal conflict: clarity. It allows you to ask yourself, do I need to respond at all? Am I reacting emotionally or strategically? Will my words add to the chaos or bring resolution? Musashi believed that in combat, the enemy reveals their weakness through movement. In conflict, people reveal their emotional weaknesses through words. When you pause, you allow them to reveal more, and you gain the advantage of perspective. 4. Silence as a shield, not surrender. Some may mistake silence for weakness, but Musashi's philosophy proves the opposite. Silence is discipline. Silence is not about avoiding difficult conversations. It's about knowing when to speak and when to let your presence carry more weight than words ever could. Because when you break your silence with purpose, your words will cut through the noise. Next time someone close to you tries to hurt you with words, remember, you don't have to play their game. Let them argue with their own echoes. And when you do choose to speak, let it be with the weight of someone who controls their voice, not someone who is controlled by their emotions. Silence is not retreat. It is restraint. And restraint is the mark of true strength. Miyamoto Musashi mastered more than just the sword. He mastered himself. He understood something that most people never will. Power is not always about action. Sometimes, power is about restraint. We live in a world where everyone is fighting to be heard. But those who truly understand power know that it is not the loudest voice that commands the most respect. It is the one that speaks with purpose. Silence is not passivity. It is not surrender. It is strategy. It is the ability to control not just what you say, but what you allow to influence you. The strongest warriors do not waste movement, and they do not waste words. They do not explain their strength. They let it be known through action. They do not seek validation. They already own their presence. So the next time you feel the need to react, to defend, to prove yourself, pause, hold the silence, let it do the work for you. Because true power doesn't need to announce itself. True power is felt. And in the end, those who master silence will always be the ones who control the conversation. The strongest warriors stay silent.